Okay.
Therapy dudes, take away your stress, put you in a good mood. If you had them over, they would eat up all your food. It's time for therapy dudes.
Andre, beautiful day here in
It
late
is a beautiful
January,
day.
right? It's going to warm up. I was glad there was a deep freeze. We are therapy dudes surviving the single digit weather over the past 3 days, the blizzard that has shut down all of America and some,
Except for Colorado.
except for Colorado. We soldier on.
We have a very warm winter.
We have a very warm winter. And in some ways, having a deep freeze is kind of like having, a troubling moment in our relationships,
Oh,
especially with significant others. And figuring out how to warm ourselves up and get back on track is always a little bit of an emotional challenge or a significant one. It can be a stumbling block and pretty depressing. And this is what we're going to get into
yeah.
today. Before we do, Boulder Psychological Services is our sponsor. We love them. Check out their website, boulderpsychologicalservices.com, for all your therapy needs. And Andre, you want to lead us off with
Oh,
what we're
yeah.
going to be breaking down?
Well, I think it's important to talk about some of these things that can happen in relationships that a lot of people find themselves in that are confusing, make people question what reality is. And I think it's good to help viewers understand some psychological terms around some of this stuff. I'm not going to talk about anything specific today, just kind of an overall arching concept of the work I've done with certain clients, families, couples, stuff like that. And I've had to teach clients this concept called reality distortion. And because I've noticed long-term impact of what that does to certain people that I work with. So, have you ever heard of this term, reality distortion?
No. I mean,
Okay.
I saw it in the notes that, by the way, Andre, 2 for 2, bringing it big. Notes and topics for our podcast. This is definitely like version 2.0, or maybe not
2.0,
2.0 of therapy.
2026.
Yes,
Yeah.
coming strong.
Well, okay, so I'll jump into it. This concept, reality distortion, if you experience it in a relationship, it can be a child with a parent, it can be a couple, it can be with you and your boss, coworkers, whatever. Basically, anywhere where there's an ongoing long-term dynamic with someone where they're causing you to question what you're observing. And it can be quite damaging to your psyche without you realizing what's happening. So I'm going to describe what it is. Reality distortion happens when someone denies, minimizes, reframes, or selectively edits what's happening. It focuses on your reaction instead of their behavior to deflect accountability and keep you exhausted. They omit key context. It implies, go ahead.
I'm just struck by what's happening in our country right now with the incidents in Minnesota and
Right.
what you're talking about, because I don't want to pull us onto that topic, but I just want to acknowledge that
Fair.
that's in the background, and that is very hard for people to, and myself included, to just kind of be able to, continue to do what we need to do for our daily life to function and for our inner world, right? Our regulation and our emotions to be able to be sort of like sustainably on point when
Right.
it feels like I'm glad you've explained this term to me, because it feels like there's a reality distortion coming at us from, one way that we're getting this sort of slanted narrative of what went down in Minneapolis.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. And reality distortion, there's one more part to it, by the way. It's also when someone implies you're insecure, sensitive, or you're the problem for noticing incongruence or pointing out inappropriate treatment or behaviors.
Okay.
Okay. So that fits exactly with what you just said. That's a actually really good example. And a lot of people really struggle to live day to day when they're focused on the incongruence. They notice that things aren't lining up, that words aren't matching actions, right? Um, and we just go on doing what we have to do because we think we gotta, we gotta live life. We have to continue. So actually, it's a really appropriate example what you just shared. That's on a, macro level of what's going on in society. Um, but over time, when you're experiencing reality distortion, something subtle but devastating happens. You stop asking the question, is what they're doing okay? Or is what I'm experiencing in relation to these people okay? Or this person or this world, right?
And
And you
why? Because it's just been sort of like happening so often that we just sort of accept it as like the norm and stop.
kind of, it's more like, hey, I just observed, we talked about gaslighting, we talked about Darvo, all those other things in the previous podcast, but it's like, hey, I'm observing something. It's clear that there's something going on that is incongruent. The behavior is not okay, or there's clearly a lie or something that we're detecting, and I'm trying to talk to you about it. My boss, my friend, whoever it is, my mom, whoever, like, and they're telling me over and over again that I'm just making stuff up. I'm insecure. I'm the problem for even bringing it up. They omit information. They focus on the fact that your tone might be a little bit of an issue or that, they deflect all accountability. So when all those things are happening, you start and you're in that prolonged position with that person for whatever reason. You start to ask a different question. You're no longer asking is what they're doing okay? Because you're not getting accountability back. You're getting a distorted version back, and then you're getting blamed. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have sort of a, I don't know, hesitation coming up in my mind, which is that I
Go ahead.
I want to like sort of sound a note of, I don't know, an invitation for people that might be feeling like they experience this, that I don't want it to seem like an all or nothing thing where it's like, hey, if something is not working out in the relationship and you feel like you're getting gaslit or that Darbo's happening or that reality distortion is happening,
Hmm.
I don't think that should be a license to stop doing our own self-reflection and critical thinking. Like,
Oh,
I don't think it's ever
sure.
the case that one person in the relationship is 100% responsible for the problems that are being created, and the other person is just completely like not not contribute, right? Like there's
Sure.
usually something going on, and
No,
of
there's a
course there can be
dynamic
like,
in both. Yeah.
right, there can be counterexamples to that for sure, but
Yeah.
I guess what's coming up for me specifically is that a lot of times early on in a relationship, if there is a dynamic like this that is showing up in our partner, and
Mm.
we have anxious attachment where we're trying to like, when there's something a little bit inconsistent or off, we want to like lean in and are desperate for reassurance and are desperate to kind of get the connection to happen. I feel like we're inviting this like seed of a problem to fester and grow into like bigger weeds. And that,
How
that
so? Tell me how so.
because if somebody's giving you inconsistent messages and they're off
Hmm.
and you're
Hmm.
securely attached, you're just going to be like, hey, these are inconsistent messages. And if they gaslight you, you're going to be like, this is probably not the right person for me.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
if we have anxious attachment, we're not, right. Like that's not how we manifest in these dynamics. It's
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like
We put
what's
away
how,
the red
how
flags
can I
or
get this right? Right. We like ignore those warning signs and we start to have this like initial like, oh, how do I fix this? Is the problem me? I need to get reassurance from this person. What do I do to soothe them to get
yes,
reassurance? And so we like allow this like seed of a problem, like we give it fuel
right.
because we want the dynamic to work and we want to feel
Yes,
connected and loved. And those are all very valid feelings and impulses.
sure.
They do, I
They
think,
come at the cost of the person who's insecure. because they're not looking at things correctly. And you can't force a relationship to work where you're being gaslit, you're being lied to. And again, I'm not talking about my personal experience when I'm saying all this. I'm talking about just the general experience I've seen with clients. But you can't make it work if one person isn't willing to take accountability and be honest, and the other person is trying to clean up everything.
Right. And just to like sort of free people up from any sense of like, oh my gosh, like what did I do wrong if I have like insecure attachment or avoided attachment? Or, what did I do right for secure attachment? None of the above. This came from early childhood relationships with our parents and
Yep.
our primary caregivers, and that's just kind of it comes upon us, right? We don't create that. We just have to live it out. But
Mm.
if through our own journey around like self-discovery and self-awareness, we realize that we have insecure attachment,
Hmm.
that is healed from the inside out, right? Like we need to look inward and start to understand these feelings, start to process them, start to like get more familiar and comfortable with them, and to inhibit the unhealthy impulses that they create. It doesn't get healed from the outside in, right? It's
Right.
not like we find somebody who will always be there for us to like massage over our insecurities and be reassuring, right? Like that's
Right.
looking for a dynamic that we would probably label as codependent.
Yes. And although I understand why you went down this rabbit hole to explain this to the audience, um, that could play into what I'm talking about, but the thing with reality distortion is usually it happens with people who are very convincing. They'll make it sound like the issue was you. They'll minimize or purposely omit key context. So you're really questioning yourself. So even if you have secure attachment, this could happen to you. But people who have secure attachment, I would argue the same thing you're saying, more likely to be like, that doesn't feel right. I'm okay with who I am. This is making me struggle, and I don't want to be a part of it, you
Right,
know?
right. So they'll selectively hunt through possible narratives to find the one that just seems like, the easiest to kind of change.
Downplay everything,
Right,
minimize it. Yeah. And then there's the flip of like, you're the problem for noticing. Like, this isn't something you should care about. Why are you talking about this? You're too sensitive, like that kind of stuff. So if you're experiencing that in the relationship, a relationship, it doesn't have to be romantic. It could, like I said, it could be a work relationship. It can be with family or whatever. But what ends up happening is you stop asking the question, is this behavior they're exhibiting and what I'm seeing them do okay? You start asking instead, am I wrong for feeling this way?
mm,
That's the internal shift in the psyche is like now it's so distorted. You don't have all the facts. The person isn't taking accountability. They're lying, and your internal um, mechanisms for detecting incongruence are firing nonstop. So you have no clue why this is happening. And they're telling you it's not because of anything but your fault, right?
right,
So it doesn't feel like abuse in the moment. It feels like confusion. It feels like self-doubt, and it feels like exhaustion. If you're experiencing confusion in any dynamic with someone, a ton of self-doubt and exhaustion, it's likely because there is some kind of distortion going on. And there are three psychological mechanisms involved. Um, I can jump right into those if you want, Dan, or did you want to
yeah.
say something?
No, I want to hear what the three ones are.
Okay, so the first one, the primary mechanism is gaslighting. We kind of talked about gaslighting a little bit earlier, but gaslighting is observing reality to be one way and then someone denying it or reframing it. So like, and it's not just like you said something in a certain way and it hurt my feelings. That's not necessarily gaslighting. That can be like, okay, I misinterpreted what you were saying or something like that. Gaslighting is more like you observed something, like you observed an actual behavior, an actual someone threw something across the room and said, "No, I didn't," right? Like, and they deny it, and then they try to reframe it and be like, "No, I wasn't angry at all. I gently, tossed it on the couch or something like that." But that's not what you saw, right? You saw a lot of anger. You saw someone throw it against the wall. It exploded. That's what I'm talking about. Does that make sense? Observable reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then the person who is gaslighting you, they avoid accountability. The person who gaslights you, the focus is shifted onto your tone, your emotions, and your reactions over the context you're bringing up. So oftentimes when that happens, and it happens consistently throughout time, you start to expect that they're gonna focus on your tone. They're gonna talk about your emotions as being the problem, and you have to be very careful of your reactions. And this takes away of you wanting to fully hold someone accountable because you're worried that you're doing something wrong. Does that make sense?
Yes, but
So, but keep
but
going. Tell
um,
me.
and I agree with you. I just want to bring up this issue that comes up a lot for me with family therapy work,
Yeah, let's hear it.
um, especially with adolescents who I feel like are often making very valid points, but they're so pissed off. Their tone is trash. Their language is vulgar, and their parents are like, "That's it. Like I told you, you can't swear at me." And now there's like a whole new problem that's getting like addressed, which is
Right,
now we have tone issues or language choice issues. And
right,
the way that you're describing it, it's like, oh, well, now the parent is gaslighting the child. But at the same time, any adult looking at what the child is doing who is a parent would be like, oh my gosh, this kid is unhinged. And I'm constantly telling the teen in those situations that their message is gold. It's valid. It needs to be spoken, but it's getting lost in all the other nonverbal stuff that is part of the communication.
right,
The tone, the like body language, and in some cases, just the language choice of it being like,
right.
something that's going to be like an incendiary word that will like, if you start to call your mom like a B word, right? Like that
It's
is
not okay.
it's not going to play well.
No.
And so like where's the line between like, I mean, I guess those are extreme examples of tone and language that we mostly know is like out of bounds for functional communication.
Right,
And in a conflict, we also know that everybody's tone is going to be somewhat less than like meditatively neutral and
exactly.
so somewhere in the middle I feel like is
Yeah.
where like the gaslighting starts to occur because of course our tone's going to be a little escalated.
And adolescents are much less likely to be emotionally regulated than adults, and they're less likely to think things through the way adults would think things through. So I'm mainly focusing on adults, when I'm bringing these concepts in.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, there could be gaslighting going on between a parent and a kid if the shift is always to the kid's frustration rather and the one thing they said, and now we're shutting down all the things that led up to that. I mean, who's to say why is that not gaslighting, right? Or minimization or if I'm really upset about something and I tell you what it is and you hear something that you didn't want to hear me say in the middle of all that, and there it is, that's all you needed to shut me down and focus on how I'm a bad person because said it in the wrong way, or I used a word the wrong way, or I was mean. You're not you're trying to control the narrative, and you're trying to look for ways to win a legal case. You're not trying to understand me. You're not trying to figure out like what's really going on, and it doesn't show that your intent is anything other than to dismiss me, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And I'm sure the kid feels dismissed, the one you're thinking of, or the kids you're thinking of, and They probably tell you that. Nobody listens. Nobody hears what I'm saying. And a lot of times in the work that I do with families is like, I understand parents, you feel disrespected, you feel betrayed, you feel like your kid doesn't care and all that. The kid feels the same way.
Yeah.
And so it's important to stop villainizing the kid every time he's trying to express himself or she's trying to express herself. And it's more important to be like, I hear what you're saying. This wasn't okay what you just said, but we'll talk about that later. Let's focus on this so we can understand each other. You know,
Right. Well,
that's
and it also seems like what you just did there is like an effort to de-escalate, and that's essential in any
any
kind
relation.
of right. And
And the two biggest predictors for relational success, do you know what they are? In terms of research and psychology?
de-escalation
Yep.
and
Yep.
um I don't know, trying to protect the other person's nervous system. No, what's the other
Y-
one?
Basically, you did get that right. Understanding each other's triggers and de-escalation. So you did get it right. Good for you, dude. Um,
Well,
but
you turned me on to Gottman, so
yeah.
that's I'm just doing the cliff notes of Gottman.
Yeah. So with that said, if people's intentions going into every discussion is to dismiss the other person, look for information to say it's their fault or something like that, that is reality distortion because we're literally omitting what's going on in front of us and looking for a reason to say, you're the problem. And what does it do to the clients that you work with, Dan, who see them go, who you see go through this? What does it do?
Oh, it does the opposite of de-escalation, right? Everybody gets escalated in these arguments, and it quickly, whatever the actual topic was, goes back to the same old kind of conflict energy, and
Yep.
um, ends up being sort of a standoff, and no,
Yeah.
nobody really gets anywhere.
Nothing goes anywhere. And now we villainize each other and we hate each other.
Yeah.
That's so I'll move on to the next two topics so we can keep it going. But the second psychological mechanism involved in reality distortion is called intermittent reinforcement. This is usually why people stay in dynamics, especially romantically or friendship wise, or um, so from
Or
behavioral,
why they continue to use the slot machine in casinos, right? Like
absolutely,
intermittent
exact same,
reward
yeah.
is, is shown as the way to just get somebody hooked forever.
Absolutely, it's very addictive. It's actually just as addictive as meth. So, if it's hooked on long enough and you go through it long enough, it's just as addictive as taking meth. So, intermittent reinforcement, it really what it is, it's unpredictable reward mixed with pain. So this creates the strongest conditioning. And what that looks like in relationships is moments of brief warmth, remorse, or connection, followed by withdrawal, denial, or disrespect. So your
Hmm.
nervous system learns if I explain better, try harder, or wait longer, this will stabilize. And that's not weakness, that's conditioning.
Yeah.
Do you have questions about that, or do you want to elaborate, or should we move on to the next
Well,
one?
I think that's not weakness, that's conditioning. I want to unpack a little bit, right? Because this is human nature in terms of how our brain wires to, like, before we make choices, how it has this sense of expectation, or how its nervous system is like wired to seek certain things, right? Like seek relief, seek reward. And this is why, whether we're talking about slot machines or the social media apps or the games that our kids are playing on their computer, that the developers of those things know that they want to be doling out rewards like a slot machine, and they do
Yep.
it deliberately to hook us in. And
Yep. And
it's
it's kind of evil.
it's very magnetizing, right? It feels
They're creating addiction on purpose. It's lucrative.
right, because they're tackling the lizard brain and our primal wiring, which happens before our like frontal lobes, like decision making capacity kicks in. So
Right.
it's like our nervous system already is seeking and wanting a certain result before we even are consciously thinking about it. So it's very, that's what like conditioning is, pointing at, is that, it's not just that, oh, well, you didn't bother to think about it. It's like, for this not predates, but happens earlier in our brains, like electrical process, than when we would be thinking. So we already have a feeling and a drive, and then our brain comes in to
That bypasses
justify.
logic.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
And that's why this is so painful. And that's why when you see people in dynamics like this and you're an outsider and you're observing it, you probably have friends that you've seen this happen to or family members. You're an outsider and you observe it. Outside of this psychological experiment that they're going through, you wouldn't understand what they're actually experiencing internally that's pulling them into the dynamic. So you'll see from an outsider, you'll see that relationship that they're in or that friendship that they're struggling with or whatever it is, and you'll say, "I don't get it. Why don't you just leave?"
yeah,
Or you'll say, "How come you're doing this to yourself? They clearly don't care." Or that person's clearly lying to you. Why are you even entertaining it? Right? It's not because these people don't see it. It's because their reality is being distorted. They don't understand the internal mechanisms playing out that are highly addictive, and their object of affection, or the person they're bonded with, or the boss they rely on, or the parent that they're codependent with, they are the ones that hold the power for that intermittent reinforcement loop, where it's like, I need to feel safe again. I need to feel like we're okay. I need to feel okay. I need them to be who I want them to be so I can feel safe.
right.
And that is an addictive pattern. So I just want the audience to understand that.
Nice. All right. We've got gaslighting. We've got intermittent rewards. I know
And the
the
third psychological mechanism,
yeah.
you want to hear it?
Yes.
Okay. So this is from attachment theory. It's attachment-based reality erosion. That's what it's called. When someone you're bonded to invalidates your emotional experience, denies causality, withholds repair, remains inconsistent. Even securely attached people become hypervigilant, they become anxious, constantly on edge, focused on monitoring rather than relating. Your attachment system is trying to compensate for inconsistency in this case. That's why it's happening. Everything internally is disorienting,
Okay.
and you're wanting to find safety and stability.
Okay. Attachment based relationship erosion,
Reality erosion.
reality erosion.
Yes.
Okay. Because if the relationship erodes, no problem. You're just done with it and you're not still caught up in the problem. Okay. So
Sure.
attachment based, you're already bonded to this person,
Yes.
and they've been, because they're manipulative and focused on figuring out how to get you dependent on them and connected to them, right? So they've created this persona that they know is going to work to get you attached.
Sure.
And then they shift their dynamics somewhat, or their true colors start to come out. And is it kind of like that intermittent reward experience starts to erode reality, or the gaslighting starts to erode reality? Like, what's the
It's so reality distortion is based off of all three. All three of those things: gaslighting, intermittent reinforcement, attachment-based reality distortion or erosion.
okay?
So those three things all play into this. And reality distortion ends up being this layered psychological, stuckness that you have with someone, and you don't know why, you don't know how to get out. It doesn't feel good. You're constantly on edge. You're people from the outside grow tired of you because you're sitting there doing the same thing over and over again. It's the same as like if you have a gambling addiction. People are like, "Are you seriously still gambling? It took your house. It took everything. You're basically homeless. Why are you doing this?" Like people who don't experience the power of something like reality distortion or addiction or something like that, right? They really can't understand why it's so hard, and they get really fed up with the people that are replaying those patterns. Does that make sense?
Right. It does. And I think it's easy to see it in other people, especially when it's not the issue that we are struggling with. But
Right.
I would say things like diet, exercise, phone management, financial behaviors, right? Usually somewhere in there, somebody has an inability to kind of manifest in like a healthy, logical way. And they're sort of like getting caught up in some maladaptive pattern.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be this like relationship thing that we're talking about, but usually somewhere in our life, we have something that we haven't really dialed in, that cognitively we know how we want to be, but somehow we're driven to resist and interrupt whatever it is that we envision for ourselves in that domain.
Absolutely. And I just want to say that reality distortion is really hard to detect in people, like because there isn't a given addiction that people can understand, right? That's also why I'm bringing this up because reality distortion is an addiction. It's a it's a addiction disorder in my opinion, and you are addicted to trying to make sense of a reality that doesn't make sense, and you are trying to find stability and and grounds where their stability just won't be fertile. And I just want to say that reality distortion does not require malicious intent. Like it can be driven by shame, avoidance, or self-protection by the person who's mainly acting out of these ways, like gaslighting and all that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter if it's intentional or not. The impact is the same. And either that person ends up willing to hear you, your boss, your family member, your partner, whoever, and they're willing to work on it, or they're not willing to work on it. They go back to being defensive, they deflect, and you really need to get out of that dynamic to heal because the damage, this is why it's so damaging. The damage wasn't one argument, it was years of having or it was years of having your reality questioned while trying to be calm, fair, and honest.
Yeah.
So what it creates is chronic anxiety. This is why people ruminate a lot who are stuck in these kind of dynamics. It creates a loss of self-trust. It creates a ton of somatic stress, like a heaviness in the chest. It creates confusion about what's real, and and it really just it erodes your sense of self in many ways.
Okay. I know we gotta wrap on part one here, but part two, I feel like, and I think this is where we're headed, is like, all right, that's the problem. What do we do about it to get healthy?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Sounds good. We'll
Okay.
do it. I hope this was helpful.
It was for me. Hopefully, it was for the listeners as well. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, comments, and we'll talk to you in part two.
Right.
Therapy dudes, take away your stress, put you in a good mood. If you had a moment, they would eat up all your food. It's time for therapy dudes.
Had to do it.